Hey everyone, it's Arwen here. Before we get started, in light of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, the topic and language in this episode, it might be a little bit heavy for young ones in an earshot. So I just want you to keep that in mind. Thanks.
And I've been tracking rooms for hours. And I think the last time he did it, I was in the room for 6 hours. And, a family member came over in that moment and she's going, oh, whoa, this is illegal. You can't do this.
Welcome to She Handled It, a podcast dedicated to sharing empowering stories of women who have faced major adversity and how they overcame it. I'm your host, Arwen Becker. I'm a wife, mom, national speaker, author, entrepreneur, and athlete. But on my journey to these triumphs, I battled many life-altering challenges. Thankfully, I found freedom when I realized I was not alone. I invite you to join me each week as I explore the inspirational stories of determined women who overcame life's toughest moments. Ultimately, how she handled it, and so can you. Since we're covering a pretty heavy topic today, I thought I would start out with a little something funny just to lighten the mood. A little bit over a decade ago, a girlfriend had come over to my house to visit and she had brought her infant daughter. And so as she was getting ready to leave, we went out to her truck in order to put her daughter into the car seat. So she's getting her all strapped in. And my 4-year-old Ashton, he runs up to me and he says, Mommy, I need to go to the bathroom. And I guess a little bit maybe to my husband's frustration, I kind of thought, I only had one sister. So I thought that as a mom of boys, every once in a while, you could just send them out into the bushes to go pee, right? So I just motioned over the bushes that were just kind of up the sidewalk. And I just said, just go over there. And so Tia and I continued to talk back and forth as we were standing at her truck. And then all of a sudden I saw this look of surprise on her face, which drew my glance about 50 feet up the sidewalk. That's where I saw Ashton. He had proceeded to pull his pants down to his ankles and he tried to get his little buns as close as he could to the bush that I had motioned to him to go to the bathroom in. Well, needless to say, he needed to go poop. So we stood there and we were hysterically laughing as we were watching him try to do his best to get those little buns as close as he could to this prickly bush. And he just ended up going to the bathroom on the sidewalk. And I guess what I learned from that day is that you need to ask your kids what kind of quote unquote bathroom they need to go before you send them off in the bushes, So truthfully, I don't have any sort of reasonable transition from that story into my next guest, but I am so excited and thrilled and honored that she decided to join us today. In light of Domestic Violence Awareness Month, today's show is going to talk with my confident and powerful, wonderful guest, Kerstin O'Shields, about her experience of leaving an abusive relationship and how out of that tornado, she found her purpose and built this brand new business empire she now has. Kerstin O'Shields is the CEO and founder of the Body Language Strategy Academy. It's a training system for learning to communicate leadership and executive presence, the way that you show up through enhanced body language and expression, messaging, and leadership skills. Kerstin works with international speakers, best-selling authors, real estate professionals, and business executives that are with Fortune 500 companies. She speaks and trains internationally on body language strategy for business and has performed many keynote speeches and workshops for organizations like Google and eBay and the National Women's Council of Realtors and the Miss Washington program. And most importantly, she is the proud mom of 2 teenage daughters, Moira and Kyla.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you too. So I know before we get into a heavier topic that you have a sweet song that I've already added to my Overcomer playlist. So tell me what the song is and what it is that you like about it.
The song is Salute by Little Mix. And I'm going to actually jump between 2 songs here because there's a song I've been singing for a really, really long time. back since I was a teenager, back, in the early 90s when In Vogue was really big. And they did a cover of Yesterday by the Beatles.
Oh,
right. And that it's talking about the strife of what you're dealing with. And I love their cover. It's yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. Now it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe in yesterday. Oh, yeah. I believe in. That's what a lot of people are experiencing right now, right? We're smack in the mix of feeling all those feels. But I think it's important to really prime yourself still and keep your focus towards what you want, right? And I think as women, that's so incredibly important, especially in these days that we're experiencing of how to balance everything and all of this craziness. And that's one of even though this is more of a rap, so I'm not going to sing this.
I was going to be impressed if you pulled that one out because your opera background, and I'm like, if she can pull this one out, I'd be pretty impressed.
But I think it really speaks to, just step up and do it. The words are, ladies all across the world, listen up. We're looking for recruits. If you're with me, let me see your hands. Stand up and salute. This is my favorite part. Get your killer heels, sneakers, pumps, and lace up your boots. Representing all women, salute. Right? And that's just like, girl, get up and make it happen. That I listen to that song in the morning all the time to get me up and moving and like, yeah, let's do this.
That was the first one that played on my playlist this morning. And I love that same frame that you pulled out because it's funny because in my book, I said almost the same thing in a sentence. It was like, get your high heels, your sneakers, or your hiking boots or something like that, and it's just like, however you're going to get there, we all do it differently, but we're all powerful. And I just love that. It speaks so much too, to what I know is the heart for you of women really being empowered in this, linking arms together. What is it that we can do to become more powerful and united as women, but still in our own differences? And that song is awesome. So, but thank you for singing. Oh, I was hoping that you would. Well, as I mentioned at the start of the show, National Domestic Violence Awareness Month here in the States. And you and I had talked a little bit in the past, but this is something that you have had personal experience with. So can you paint a little bit of a picture for us as to the woman that you used to be?
There's definitely a woman I used to be. I would say it started from a very young age, growing up in an alcoholic family, so it's a very volatile environment to grow up in. And what was really communicated to me and the programming that comes in with that is, Kerstin, you're smart enough to know that this isn't okay, but don't say anything. And I know that message was said to me, honestly, for my own safety, right? To keep me from being a target of all that volatile environment and everything that was going on. But it stuck with me for a long time. And it's something I carried with me of how I was approaching life, of really stepping into being the people pleaser and not actively standing up for myself as much as I should have. And that leaked into so many different parts and with so many different people and relationships, and definitely went into how things happened in my marriage and not looking for those opportunities for things to go haywire. But they still, I think when you're looking at the world through that lens, you start to give space and without understanding in the moment, you start to allow some space for things to start getting volatile again. And I definitely did not give permission to be in an abusive relationship, even though it happened. And I was very, very happy in the first 2 years of my marriage. And as time started going on, things started to change. When we started to argue about, which, every marriage, you're going to have arguments, and That's part of the growth process. That's part of two humans living underneath the same roof, right? Trying to figure out how you're going to make this work. And the disagreement started to move more into a violent space. He got physically abusive with me once, and my tactic, which I had learned young, was if things start getting volatile, just walk away, right? Don't stay in the environment, leave, get out of the target zone. And so when I started feeling that those things were coming up between us, I would start to walk away, and he grabbed me by the back of the neck and tried to control me, and then tried to throw me down. And he learned that wasn't going to work. I was very, very blessed. This is a message I've taken very, very deeply in. When I was 19, I was working at a restaurant, and all the wait staff will all hang out after, go out, and we all get to know each other. And one of the guys that I worked with was a little bit older. He was into martial arts, and he came up to me one time and took me aside. I think he could sense like I was really that people pleaser type of person. And he said, "Kerstin, I want to have a talk with you because you're a pretty girl, and not all men treat pretty girls the way they should. And I just, if you're cool with it, I'd like to show you some self-defense stuff and just, talk about that a little bit." And so I was very blessed. And, that was God's light going, "Honey, you need this for later." It really, that was such a blessing, because the thing that really has saved me in this aspect of being in an abusive relationship was, he goes, "You're never going to win a fight. When somebody is coming at you, whether it's a stranger, whether it's someone they're way ahead of you mentally in the fight. Their body's already primed because their adrenaline's already up, because they're already getting the sense of making the decision to come after you. So they're way ahead of you in the whole process of fighting." He goes, "You're never going to win that fight. But," he goes, "make yourself a hard target." And so the number one thing to do is keep moving. Don't stop moving. Okay. No matter what the situation is, do not stop moving until you can get away. And that is what saved me hugely, because that's what I did. When he grabbed, I kept moving and pushing him off, and he realizes like, "Oh, wow, she's going to fight back. This isn't going to work." So he never tried that with me again after that. But there were instances where, and of course, I told him that was absolutely not okay. There's no way I'm going to put up with that. He went into counseling at that point to quote unquote fix it. He had been married before me, and it was my first marriage, and there had been some aggression in that marriage, and he wanted to blame it on, "Oh, that's just how we were." And I don't care.
If he had those issues in his prior relationship, how early on in your relationship with him do you feel you were starting to see these red flags?
I would say about a year into our marriage.
And how long of a relationship at that point had you been in with him at that point?
We were together about a year and a half before we got married. So that was, again, about 2.5 years in. That's when he started punching walls. That's when he would headbutt walls, which I thought was really weird. I was just like, "What are you doing?" And then there was one instance where, again, I was doing that. Okay, this is getting too ramped up in our argument here. I started to walk away, and he grabbed one of the cats and threatened to kill the cat if I didn't come back.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And that's when I was like, okay, this is not okay. Definitely not okay.
As you're looking back on this, because, here, all the times that I've been with you, and certainly this is something that I know that you've said from stage, is that one of the biggest things that people compliment you on is your posture. It's really this more so than just the posture. It's how you enter the room, and this presence that you have that is it's so stunning, and it's so confident, and it's so self-assured. Yet I think what can be so surprising, and I'm an example of that too, of how somebody can believe that they can take advantage of somebody who, even to the outside world, appears to have it all together. And I think that's a lot of what you teach and you help to train other people, because what appears to be confidence and what we allow people to do or to start to do, or how we present ourselves, really is a reflection of how we see ourselves too. And so how do you reconcile a woman like you who is that confident, but still there was somebody, he thought that he could do that to you?
And that's hugely 100% what you said. I'm so passionate about teaching that because of exactly that. Back in that moment, I was, as a singer and as a performer, I had still good posture, but I unfortunately had what I call the disease, which is the benefit of the doubt disease. And I was giving too many chances. I kept saying, this isn't okay, but then I would give another chance. And then, okay, it's not okay, but then I would get another chance. And what I was really doing was betraying my own message. I wasn't standing behind it. And my thought process at that point was, well, I care about this person. I want them to get help, which I did desperately. Unfortunately, I was doing it at my own detriment.
One of my other guests, we talk about the same thing too. And it's the same thing. I mean, she just said at what point there would be this honeymoon phase where he would be aggressive and abusive. And then it's like, oh my gosh, I love you. I'll never do that again. Whatever I need to do to keep this together, and draw her back into this cycle that just continued to perpetuate and perpetuate. You were how old during this time?
I got married when I was 26. So this was in my late 20s that this was happening.
Late 20s. So if you were talking to yourself back in your late 20s, what would you have told yourself at that point when these things were occurring?
Leave.
It seems so simple and easy.
But it's hard because, and I think this is the part that's not talked about as much. About 5 years into the marriage, I went and asked for help from family. And the message was, well, you're married. You need to go fix your marriage. And so that was, inside it was such a turmoil because I'm like, well, when do I count? Right. And it wasn't even in my marriage that I was being told that, I didn't count because I was being abused. And then I go outside for help and I'm still being told, well, it's not about you, it's about your marriage. And I'm like, well, how am I not part of that equation? Right. Why is my safety not being taken seriously?
And so how did you finally get to the point where you recognized that it didn't matter what family or professionals were saying that was contrary to the way you felt, lack of safety at home and the lack of respect and all of the other pieces that went with it? What was the time period where you finally said, this is not going to happen to me anymore? I am worth more than this? No.
Unfortunately, I was married for 12 years. So it was a very long period. Because I accept, okay, I'm stuck, right? And I just had that frame of mind for a while. And then it escalated into he would trap me in room. And I could trap in rooms for hours. And I think the last time he did it, I was in the room for 6 hours. And, a family member came over in that moment and she's going, oh, whoa, this is illegal. You can't do this. And that finally gave me like, okay, finally someone sees this isn't okay. And I even had a cop come to, this is the one that made me crazy. Even had a cop come to the house in one of these instances, or come, I'm talking to him on the phone and my ex-husband had talked to him first. And then I get on the phone with him and he's like, well, here's the thing, you guys got to work this out because I got the real story from your husband. So, there were so many different places I was getting this message of, you don't matter. You don't count in this. And it finally got to the point where when I caught him being abusive with my oldest daughter, Moira, that was it. That's when I was done. And I know this is a big spot for you. Women feel stuck financially in marriages. And that was one of the huge things. Like, if I can't get help from other people, I don't know how I'm going to do this on my own. To truly leave, I have to do this on my own fully. And when it got to the point where I kind of being abusive with Moira, I really had to get to that place where I would rather live in my car than live in this marriage anymore. If that's what it takes, fine. It is not emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically, financially worth it anymore. I'm done. I don't know what that looks like. but I know what this looks like and I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I heard the exact same thing from Jessica Conness, who her episode ran before yours, and it was that same. I mean, she stayed so much longer because she wasn't working. She had a baby, and yet for years the abuse went on severely, and it wasn't until her daughter was threatened. What does that say about us as women? Here we're willing to put such enormous value on our children and their safety and their protection and do absolutely, like you said, anything. I will live in my car. I will do whatever's necessary. It does not matter. It does not matter. I will figure this out. But it was only until your daughter was now threatened. But yet your own life not valuing it the same and staying so much longer. Because you said you were recognizing these things within the first year of your marriage, but yet, we're talking a 12-year process or, 11-year process after that. And that's the thing that I hear over and over as I'm having these conversations that, we'll put so much higher value on other people. Women just do this. They'll advocate and they'll stress and they'll strain and they'll do whatever to help protect other people. But what's our value in that?
Exactly. And why does that not matter? Right? Why are we giving space for that? Why are we letting those messages still permeate many, many parts of life, many, many aspects of who we encourage to be in our lives, different things that we choose to participate in? It's still like, well, you're the mom. That particular phrase and the way it's said, well, you're the mom, is automatically said in well, you don't count as much, so you just have to deal, which is what, again, the message I would say, well, you're just going to have to deal. Yeah, it sucks, but you're just going to have to deal. And that's crap. It's just crap. I was just going to say, and I realized that as soon as I got out of, this awful situation and literally life is like, okay, you got to figure it out right now. Part of what I really actively put time and thought and energy into was, what's the message I want my daughters to get from this? It really hit me so hard in that moment. I am the example of what this looks like. And I got to be intentional about that.
Because what you allow, they will allow in their future.
And it's what permission I give is the permission I'm giving them to give too.
So what did happen? I mean, what was that like when you finally said, it doesn't matter. I whatever I have to do, was it truly as bad as you thought it was going to be when you finally made that break?
It was scary because it's that big unknown. It was the biggest sigh of relief I have experienced in my life. And I had many people go, are you having a hard time with letting go of the relationship? And by that time I was like, no, that's been scratched out with nails and claws. No, absolutely not. And I think, it was interesting. I didn't give myself space to hide from what was happening. I didn't watch TV because I didn't want to numb out. I had music going on in the background. The music has been my companion for a very, very long time. And that's when I started to get into the self-development books. That's when I started researching, diving into more of my faith. What does that look like? I got more involved with my church. And I would say it was about a 3 to 4 month turnover where I was finally like, okay, we're not going to be living in the car. Now, I'm not joking. There were months where I was literally searching through the car, ripping up the cushions in my couch, trying to find pennies. I mean, I literally remember having, in every single account I owned, I had one account that had 3 cents in it. I literally had 3 cents to my name. And I was very blessed to getting more involved with church. I got involved with their group things. And through that, one of the people there gave me an invitation to meet one of their friends who's a corporate business person and a financial coach. And so that's when I started getting exposure to what does financial advice look like. And I'm like, well, we have zero to work with. So what does that look like?
We're only going up from here.
We are literally starting from scratch. So we can figure that out. Great.
One of the things that you said, actually, there were two things that you said that so resonated with me. One, you didn't hide so often, and I'm certainly guilty of it too. When we're feeling guilt or shame about something that we feel like people won't understand, we hide. You brought it out into the light. You talked about it, you got support, and then you went and you sought support from a support network, which, again, a lot of times we don't want to face these pieces. And so you found that from your church, but then you also didn't numb your way through it, because any sort of grief, the loss of a relationship, the loss of an idea of what this relationship was supposed to be, the amount of people are like, this is your marriage and you need to go work it out. And marriage is tough and marriage is hard. And it's like, oh, then I must suck because I couldn't somehow fix it and make it work. So the grief that you experienced from that, but you allowed yourself to walk through it and to feel it, because you have to. You can't avoid grief. You have to be willing to let it flow, go through it, and recognize the sooner I let these waves come through, there'll be less over time. And I'll find myself on the other side of it if I don't numb it with alcohol and drugs and Netflix and, or work or whatever it might be, And so I just so admire you. I just wanted to make sure that those two things are really pulled out, because I think that's really important.
Thank you. And they're not easy to do. They're really, and you have to be dedicated to it. You have to do it with attention. There were months. It was interesting. I remember getting just a ridiculous amount of advice from everybody once you get divorced. Everybody's giving you advice. This is how you make your life better. Make your life better for your kids. Blah, 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 blah. And now I'm dealing with my kids gone every other weekend. And, you never envision that type of thing. And I remember the silence just grating at my bones. Right? The energy and the shift in the house of just, because you get used to that kind of chaotic energy. And people don't talk about that a lot. That grief part is actually getting used to calm and stepping into, okay, what does it mean to have peace? Because I don't know what that feels like, right? That's another huge, scary unknown. And I think women struggle with, well, I'm trying to do this, but it feels like the peace actually feels hard because it's so different. And then I think that's part of why it's not talked about, because it's like, well, you're experiencing peace. Shouldn't you feel better? And you're like, well, I'm freaking trying to.
But this just doesn't feel normal to me.
That doesn't feel normal to me. I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah, when you're in survival mode for a long time and then all of a sudden you find yourself not there, I think there is such a huge tendency to kind of be like on pins and needles going, when is it going to get bad again? When am I going to go back to that feeling again?
And you're ready for the shoe to drop. And you just stay in that survival, mode. And that's one thing that I really learned for myself and that I've really brought into my practice is if you want things to be different, they need to feel different. They need to be different. And you have to step into and remind yourself, okay, this is different. It feels wonky. And that means you're moving towards something different. And that's what you want.
Right. Different is not bad.
Different is not bad. Now, the more attention you give it, the more you're going to get to the different that you want. Right. But that's where I started to learn that process. I had to think differently in my head. I really had to learn to think differently in my head. And I normally don't swear. This will probably be the first time I've ever used an F-bomb live.
Yeah.
But you're all excited. Yeah, bring it. But I call this the F-bomb story because it really had such a pivotal change for me. I would think I was divorced for about 6 months. And we went over to a friend's house and the girls and I are over there. And these are friends I've had since college. And we got into okay, Kerstin, really, how are you doing? Right. And these are my people. So this is where we're getting into the real deep conversations. And I was struggling. I was right smack in the middle of that. Like I'm trying to find peace that just, it's so hard because it's so, I don't know what this looks like. I'm trying to figure out how to make this happen. I'm trying to do this on my own. I'm trying to support the household. I'm trying to be a mom now. I'm trying to raise my girls by myself. Now I'm back into dating, which is, that's a whole big nightmare. especially as a single mom. And, God bless my friend who was like, oh, okay, well, let's look at this a little bit differently. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you're the only adult in the household now. You have full say over everything that happens. You don't have to argue with someone else over the rules for the girls in the house. He was trying to give me that shift of different.
Right. Reframing.
And I was really resistant. I was like, I know, but I'm doing this by myself and it's so hard. I was so in that space, right? And he goes, Kirsten, you know that voice you feel or you hear in the back of your head that when you're going through this and tells you you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, this is so hard. And I'm like, oh yeah, I hear her all the time. And he goes, what's that fucking bitch ever done for you? And now here's the thing. He's a man who is very, very well-spoken, he's, VP in these top Fortune 500 companies, very chill, cool. Again, very much in that reframing. How do we create positive? When he said that, I felt like I got slapped across the face. It just caught me so off guard.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. And it really hit me. It's like, yeah, she's never done anything good for me.
She is a bitch. Get rid of her.
She is a bitch.
Tell her to shut up.
Right. And I remember a couple weeks later, I was in my kitchen and of course, it's one of those weeks where everything's going wrong and all those voices are starting to come up in my head again. And I'm an opera singer. I have a big voice. And at the top of my lungs, I was just like, stop it. Right. And everything went quiet outside and inside my head, like stopped. That's when I realized like all this, the self-development stuff I've been reading, I'm like, holy smokes, I do get to decide what I think. Like that was the first time I really, really full on experience. I have full control of this. This is not just her and me going back and forth and whoever wins, wins. Like this is me actively. And that really changed everything. And I remember after that, again, having another very hard week, sitting with my financial advisor, who's now a very good friend of mine. And I'm just pouring, sobbing, like literally in the middle of the coffee shop, having a hot meltdown. And I stopped and she's like, are you okay? And I will never forget this conversation for as long as I live. And I said, I think so. She goes, what do you want to do? And I said, first, I'm going to go in the bathroom and I'm going to clean myself up. Second, I'm going to go get another cup of coffee. And third, I want to figure out my financial life because I'm sick of being broke. And it was so funny because every time I said that, she was like, okay. And all I needed was that permission, right? And that's all I needed was like, okay, that's something that's doable. And it was in that moment, she and I sat there and strategized. She had grown up in the performance world as a dancer and singer. So she understood my skill sets in the performance world, but she's also in the corporate world. And she was the one who said, my friend Leah, she said, your presence, the way you show up on stage is so desperately needed in the business world. And I said, honey, I can get business from soccer moms for kids to take voice lessons. So I was starting to bring in enough money to support us, but I was never seeing my kids. So I was like, I've got to figure out something else. This isn't working. And so with that, she said, okay, let me give you some exposure to this. Why don't you come to a mastermind that I'm a part of? Just get a feel for the business world, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. And we'll sit down and strategize. So I got, all dressed up, which that I know how to do. And showed up to this mastermind, and there was about 10 of us there, and we're all taking our turn introducing ourselves at the beginning of this meeting. It was my turn. I stand up and I said, my name is Kerstin O'Shields. I'm the owner of O'Shields Studio, which is a voice studio, and teaching kids and adults how to perform on stage. And I'm looking now to start a new business and take that same skill set into helping people in how they're showing up on stage for their business, whether you're an author, business person, entrepreneur, whatever that looks like for you, but how to really show up dynamically, engage more people about your business. And the guy next to me put his hand down. He goes, well, I'm really glad to meet you because I'm your first client. And I went, I'm really glad to meet you too. And so I freaked out a little bit after that first meeting. So I talked with him, like, okay, I've got a client. I don't know what to do with them. I have no idea what to do with this. And she goes, well, just do a discovery, get a feel for what he's looking for, what you need, or, what he's looking for in help. And then we can start to tailor it around that. So I met with him, and I think it took maybe 5 to 10 minutes. And I went, okay, I get it. I see it. I see what that transfer looks like for what I've done my whole life. That's how I can help other people. And that was the birth of body language strategy.
How long ago was that?
It'll be 8 years ago in February.
Wow. And it's amazing because, there's a lot of people who have great ideas of businesses and things that, people are constantly telling them, gosh, you're so good at that. And yet we minimize it because we have our own internal dialogue, that woman on your shoulder that you had to yell at, who's telling you all the things that you're not. But it's so incredible when you finally take that step of faith and you believe that this gift that you have, that everybody keeps saying is a gift, that you're willing to accept your value and not give it away for free. Do you think anything that you went through in the past was a piece that ended up framing you choosing to go that route and build that company?
Absolutely. I think a couple things. That one piece of advice that I got from the friend who was the martial artist, just keep moving no matter what. And I gave myself permission to do that, right? Stepping into this idea of what would that look like to take my gift and use it in a different way, and really be willing to let that continue to grow. I will say the learning curve was not a curve. It went straight up. There was zero curve in that learning, which was a lot, right? And then that I had to keep moving and figuring it out. And that's the beauty of this process, is that's not going to stop, and it shouldn't. And stepping into that and understanding that's part of the joy of growing and learning in the business, and where now I have the academy, that's what got me to this point.
Now you get to see how the work that you do impacts other people in their own life, how they get to show up in a much more powerful way, not only to be successful. I mean, success in whether monetarily or, accolades or whatever that might be, but coming back to the core of what you experience, just overall safety, just how you show up in the moments that you're walking through Starbucks, the moment that you're out at the gas station. These are the things that you teach women especially, and are so, so valuable to their overall daily safety. And I think that's just, that was one of the things that I really admired when I saw you speak for the first time.
Oh, well, thank you. And that's something, and this is my selfish part. My joy meter just goes through the roof when I watch somebody go from, like you said, those really protective, hands crossed or head, really to the side, going into that very submissive, giving up their power kind of body stance for the purpose of them stepping into their gifts, right? Really fully standing in the balance in the center of that, standing proudly in that, standing confidently in that. And then, it's that candle lights a candle. When that person is like that, you're now giving other people permission to do the same thing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It up levels every single room. And so watching me going through that process with somebody, oh my gosh, my joy meter is off the chart.
I bet. I can so believe it. So when you look back, when you think back to all of these years now that have gone by, what are some of the things that you really learned in that process that you would just say, you know what, this is what I took away from going through that experience?
I think one of the biggest messages is you're never stuck. No matter what the situation is, you are never stuck. And again, that idea that keep moving, the more you move, the more opportunities you're going to find. And let people see you moving. Don't try to hide it, right? Allow people to see you actively moving into your greatness. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't, and by all means, please don't be perfect. Oh Lord, that's one of the biggest things I preach at the BLS Academy is this is not about showing up perfect. We do not want to create Stepford wives. That is 100% a no, right? It's really about stepping into your purpose. And I think, especially as women, we get really, really caught up in that idea of we need to show up perfect. And that's what creates all those little pockets of shame and guilt. And that's what pulls us back into why I'm stuck here because I'm not perfect and I can't get out of this. And it's so important to really dive into your purpose. And I think that starts to open the door and opens your own vision into clarity of what does that look like? What needs to be a part of that? And you get to choose what that looks like. You get to choose what that looks like. You are not stuck. Okay? Here is going to be process. You better believe it. It's definitely going to be process, but you're never stuck, ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else on that topic?
I think back to my grandma a lot. Very just beautiful woman. She had 8 kids. I think there's 18 grandchildren, many, many great grandchildren. And I have never once heard her yell at anybody. She was such a lady. She always wore pearls. I wear pearls all the time in remembrance of her. And she used to say this all the time. When something frustrating was happening, she would go, well, I just don't know why a person would do that. And you're like, oh, wow. Yeah, I don't know either. I'm sorry. That was such a shining example to me of your presence is the permission you give for how people interact with you, the environment that you create around you. And so that's something that I think about a lot is me just walking into a room. What's the permission and the purpose that I'm giving with this? Before I even say hello, what does that look like? And again, it doesn't have to look perfect, but when you show up with purpose, people want to understand it and they want to pull into it. And perfect has that really like that nasty taste in your mouth kind of thing. And we, especially as women, we disservice ourselves so much trying to be perfect.
Yeah, it's the relatability. The relatability does not come through perfection. It comes through, those things that make us human. And that's where people, just like you said, when you're still in your purpose, even though you're kind of going, you're traversing this road, trying to figure out exactly where your calling is and kind of going back and forth in the center line. But as long as you're going somewhere, people at least can respect that versus I'm terrified to do the wrong thing and fail. So therefore, I'm just going to stay here where it's safe and I won't look stupid and I won't make a mistake. And, people won't think less of me or whatever. And people are going to think things about you one way or another, whether you're doing right or wrong.
Exactly. I mean, people are going to make up their own stuff. Don't worry about what they're doing. And I think the other message I really got from my grandma is she was so funny because she was just like, well, I'm just going to bring my happiness, whether you want it or not.
I like your grandma. So in the last few minutes, rapid fire 3 questions. So best piece of financial advice that you've been given or wisdom?
Step into it. Your plan is never going to be the same. Right. The whole point is it continues to move, but unless you're stepping into it, you don't know what to do with it.
It's good. It's good. And then a book that you would recommend and why?
Oh my goodness. There's so many. I love on audiobook. You're a Badass. I love those books so much. I prefer them on audiobook way more than reading them because the vocal tone that she uses is so exceptional and so funny. But Think and Grow Rich, any of those are so key. I'm a big fan of Brendon Burchard's books. Just again, very intentional. Learn the intentional side of your life.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And then what is a favorite quote of yours?
Oh my goodness. My favorite quote, I'm trying to remember it's an anonymous thing. If you don't like it, it's not yours.
If you don't like it, it's not yours. Yeah, I get that. That's deep. That's simple and deep.
Yeah. If you don't like it, it's not yours. Why are you spending so much time? Oh, I don't like that. Then it's not yours.
I love it. That's so good. So good. So how can we get a hold of you? Anything that you would like our listeners to look up of yours? How can they follow you? Give us all the goods.
Oh, I would love for people to contact me. You can always go to the blsacademy.com. So it's the blsacademy.com. Or you can contact me personally at Kerstin, Kerstin at the blsacademy.com. And I get so much joy, like a ridiculous amount of joy from helping people to step into their greatness. So I want to gift your listeners with a 5-day body language online challenge. So walking through 5 different days of 5 different areas of life, right? And really the hashtag that we have for the Academy is, how are you showing up? And that's how we're looking at each one of those days. And so in each day, you're receiving a video training, you're receiving a actual success tool. Like, here's that training. Here's how to put it into action. We're always doing the tangibles. This is something tangible you can put into your day right now to start showing up with more purpose. And then you're going to take each one of those and step it into the next day. So that we'll leave a link for that people can connect to. But again, the main thing is there's many, many courses that are at the Academy, the BLS Academy, for specific areas of where you feel like maybe I'm not showing up the way I want to. I want something different in how people are responding to me, and more importantly, how I'm responding to them. Body language strategy is about how are you proactively showing up, not reactively, right? What's the proactive side where you can step into a room, you can create the environment with your presence and pull in the reaction you're looking for. Because our big mantra is what you reflect out, it's what is reflected back to you. So that's the focus of all of it. So I invite everybody into this 5-day challenge. An email is sent to you each day with each new challenge of how to step into it. I love hearing which one is your favorite challenge. I love hearing. So by all means, send me an email, or you can send comments right there in the challenge of, oh my gosh, this was my favorite because, and this was I totally see how this shifted, how people, and how I'm creating purpose in my life. We absolutely love getting those messages.
Oh, good. Well, we'll make sure that we put all of that in the show notes. Kerstin and I she worked with my trainees for my training company, Life with Arwen, where we were working on body language. This is what she does. She is very professional at it. So certainly take her up on the offer. I was mesmerized when I saw her do a 3-hour training at an event I was an MC at. And I couldn't believe, I was like, who can mesmerize an audience for 3 hours of training? And this woman can. So you're not going to be disappointed, I guarantee you. So please, a lot of times we don't put emphasis on things that are quote unquote free, but I'm telling you, you will get so much out of that. So make sure that you go click on the link and you get what it is that she's able to offer you.
And those trainings are now done virtually also. Now that we're in this space, I'm doing those trainings all over the country and all over the world now, virtually.
Yeah, I love that. That's so good. Well, thank you, my friend, for joining us today. It means the world to me. You have been such a blessing to me in such a short period of time. And I really have been amazed at how much I gleaned from you in just the 2 personal interactions that we've had. And you are such a light to the life around you and the people and women, especially, to be able to show up in this powerful way with strength, but grace and poise. And the world needs a lot more of what you have to offer. So thank you so much. And thank you for your honesty today.
Oh, thank you so much for the blessing of being here. And I feel truly blessed to have you in my life. And I very much am so appreciative of our connection and our time together every time.
Thank you. Thanks for spending time with me on the She Handled It podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please be sure to subscribe so future interviews are automatically downloaded directly to your device. And if you want access to the show notes, including links to all the resources mentioned, visit lifewitharwin.com/podcast. Thanks again for joining me. Now charge forth, because if she handled it, so can you.